The skills that you need to run a developer program kind of fall into three clumps. One is developer empathy. And ideally, that's earned by being a developer and maybe even being a development team manager so you can see how software teams really work. The second piece is to be analytically oriented, right? You have to go and find metrics where none exist. And when there's a lot of qualitative sense of what needs to be done, that's got to be translated into quantitative. How do you set goals? How do you communicate to other teams if you're succeeding or if you need help? And then third, you need to have a background in some marketing skills. And many developers feel like marketing is not something they want to talk about, but marketing is a very seasoned, mature discipline with lots of subgroups, right? Content marketing, channel marketing, right? Who's going to listen to what you have to say? And can you measure the uptake? So I think we need to have those three things all together without overemphasizing any one. If you have those in balance, you'll probably have a good leader for your DevRel program. I think the biggest challenge in managing and growing a developer program is staying close simultaneously to the developers using your product and to the engineers building your product. It's really easy to overbalance either way, right? Often you'll get so consumed in interaction with the community that takes up all of your time. And if you follow sort of the pebbles, rocks, sand model of how you set up your time, each one of those conversations is closer to sand. And that can fill up the cup so that you have no room to give solid feedback to engineering, take time to build engineering relationships, which is the other half of how the system really works. Alternately, you can have people who really want to focus on writing demos and writing samples, but don't feel comfortable going out and interacting with individual developers. So you really have to have that whole system working. Finding people who want to do that is less difficult than framing that that's actually the problem you're trying to solve. Pitfalls to avoid in building a developer relations program, I think, have to do with under-communicating your value inside the company while just going and creating value outside the company. Because a developer program has got to thrive. If you have a developer program with one DevRel person and that's where you are for 10 years, that's probably not a successful program, right? A successful team will grow with the success of the business. So that requires you to go, let's go produce value, and then let's go tell the story about how we produce the value so that we can continue to roll forward. Setting realistic goals is kind of the core of what makes DevRel so challenging in business. And I think it's related to some of the pitfalls, which can be, we're going to get real qualitative and say, well, of course we should do this thing. We know it's the right thing because we know. That doesn't really translate very well to upper management. And so the reason for that is upper management knows that they don't know everything about everything. So you rely on numbers to understand how things that you don't really, have familiarity with are performing. So it's really critical to say, okay, this year, we're in year one, we don't know much. We're going to try to baseline developer sentiment about what we've got. And we're going to try to baseline how we should interact with developers at events. So we're going to invest $100,000 in 5 events, and we're going to try to confirm that we've reached 50 people at each event. We're going to come back with that, and then we're going to write reports which you'll score and you'll quantitatively value how informative these were. That would be a pretty reasonable baseline for a year one. Then you can start to build your muscle as you understand what the company values and how to build this whole operational system. Developer communities grow best when their career objectives are being reached, right? Developers aren't secretive people. They tend to talk about what they do. They're also not abstract. They're people who are writing code to achieve an outcome, and frequently in order to get paid for it. So when you look about career motivations, they have to be seen as successful in their organization. So building a developer community is all around enabling people to get what they need to get done faster, ideally connect and inspire them a bit, and then let them network with each other to share these ideas. Hey, I did this thing and I got a really good review as a part of it as a result, right? How many more people can tell those kinds of stories of real impact in their career and not just exchange information about the technology? That's really important, but pretty much every developer program is going to explain to you, how do we do the tech? The breakthrough successes are the ones which also say, here's how I built my company and that worked, or here's how I advanced my career within the company I'm at. Those kinds of things really move the needle. The best advice I have for somebody who's running a developer program is make sure that you're still using the software. One of the biggest risks you have in organizational management in general is you go higher and higher, and more of your day ends up being reading reports, writing reports, handling escalations, being in meetings, and you can end up getting not just rusty, but in fact afraid of getting back and hands-on and writing a demo or showing the software. So being able to carve out the time, whether it's a day, a month, or a week, a quarter, to really make sure that you're using the software, it will keep you indelibly close to the actual problem you're trying to solve, and you will never be afraid. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts, right? A lot of being effective at program leadership is to be like, I really know these things. I don't know everything, but I've got really good intimacy with what we're actually doing. So I'm not going to be stumpable, and I'll walk in any conversation and feel confident. One way that technology could change developer programs and how we run them in the future is better understanding of the economics. So Gandal and a number of other researchers created this economic research, which is based on the idea of code spillovers. It's one of the first attempts to measure the economic value generated by developer communities. That's a really important signal. If we can start to automate the detection of, let's say, new open source code that calls a particular API, right, or implements a particular technique that uses a technology, and watch the proliferation and distribution of those techniques, we can start to know a lot more about the impact. We could say that's a really important signal that this technology is broadening and getting diffused, and therefore the program is kind of working. Those kinds of big data approaches haven't really been available to us. And I think increasing the instrumentation and automation of how code gets built, how people interact, will give us a much better sense of almost a day-to-day pulse on whether or not the program's working, including things like sentiment and how things are going, but really being able to impute economic value in a broad way and being able to make sure that you're taking effective actions. That would be the realm of some maybe future, machine learning driven, big data oriented system.